I'm talking to Gersha about costumes on Star Trek Discovery. How are you doing, Gersha?
I'm doing all right.
Costumes are crazy on the show. How was it to take the iconic costumes and then use them for this new series? Because they don't look like the ones from the Star Trek series I've watched over the years.
No, they don't. They're definitely different. We sort of, when you're doing something like this, you have to look at the whole world, the whole canon, because there's so much there to pull from. We definitely looked at where they positioned our show. We have before has Enterprise, and then we have the J.J. Abrams Kelvin era ship, and then we fall right there, and then it's Enterprise next. So there was an option to go forward or backwards. We did try the three-color journey. That was our first thing, but at the same time we always had a single color that we were also testing. And they chose gray, I think, as a nod to the Ripley from Alien, and I think that's where that comes from. And so we were trying both things to figure out what we liked, and then we ended up going to the three colors, and when we camera tested them, nobody liked them on the ship. So that's what ended up happening. And so it was like back to the drawing board, and at that time they said, Gersha, here's your opportunity to take this and run with it, which was like a huge pressure at that time because we were so late in the game. And I thought, hey, if I was going to do this, I would make it Navy. Because when we were researching, we were also doing a lot of research with, naval uniforms, Army uniforms, different things like that. And one of the things that resonated with me was this idea of explorers. And they were from the naval forces usually. And so that's where the Navy sort of came in. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do it Navy. I told my team, let's make a Navy one. And at the very same time, Aaron sent me this email with a picture from Williams Sonoma that had Navy as the base, and then it had, you could choose your metal with it, and it had silver, gold, and copper with it. And it was like, oh my God, that's perfect. So that's what we just started developing then, and we did that just before Christmas. We literally, and we had like just the amount of time to get that done in. So, because it takes 5 weeks to get the fabric dyed to our, no more than that actually, to get it dyed to our perfection, to our specifications, and then shipped because it's made in Switzerland. So yeah. It's a high performance fabric that's a 4-way stretch. It's really cool. Anyway, this is too much information about all that stuff, but yeah, but it was I think that what we ended up with. I think it works. It's not what everybody wanted, possibly, but I think that it grounds the show in some reality, which is good for us, because it would be hard to do what TOS did and try to and copy that exactly. So I feel like even though everybody's not happy with the fact that we went on our own little journey there, but I feel like it really works well, and also. The other thing I was going to say too is the compression panels, which are the gold pieces on the side, are actually like a life monitoring system, and they can also support you with a pressurization if anything happens to your ship. So there's like many different things that we've built into it and have thought out of, and that actually came from Brian Fuller. So that's sort of like the story of it. It's a long story and a long journey. And also I think for me too, the other thing is that when I started, I wasn't the costume designer. I was working with Sudarat Lalarbe, and Brian Fuller was very heavily involved with the costumes at that time, and they were both on American Gods, so I was brought in to sort of help get the ball rolling. So I started off with Sudarat's concept designs, and the other thing that she talked about a lot was the collar and the use of the collar, and how important the collar was established or designed in the 13th century, and it was designed as a protection for your throat. And so and if you look at costumes throughout time, uniforms throughout time, the collar never leaves, except for sci-fi in the 60s. And that's sort of like the one part where they don't tend to use collars very often. And I think that, I feel like that had a lot to do with the time. Like the late 60s was really very mod, and there were a lot of these, I don't know, I guess I gotta go this way. There were a lot of these, the Nehru collar and the band collar shirts and things like that. So that was like I feel like that was the impetus for a lot of sci-fi at the time, because it was like the newest and most hip thing at the time, or most advanced thing. So when after Sudarat had said that, though, and she made her argument for the collar, I was like, that's the one thing I'm going to hold on to. I feel like that's important. So that was one thing. And I think she did, when her original design, the zipper was on, but it wasn't as asymmetrical. It was more asymmetrical, and the collar was bigger. So we just made it smaller, changed the fabrication, and made the zipper a little less asymmetrical, which I think works really well, and then we also made it metallic and as a feature point, and it ties into the color of the compression panels. So that's the journey of the uniform.
Now, the outfits that everybody is wearing, not just the Starship Enterprise staff, but also the aliens, I couldn't get over how different the costumes look for the Klingons. To show, and it sort of showed each Klingon's house has a different look.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for that?
Well, that's another story point. It comes from the producers when they basically, we get the scripts and we discuss the scripts on what they want to see in terms of costume. And one of the things when we were doing the houses, it was like they felt that, like people as we are, we all don't dress the same. We don't wear the same thing. So they just figured that they should give them more of an identity that way, and not at least within the houses, as opposed to how Klingons were done in the past, where they're all wearing exactly the same clothing, which is just slightly unrealistic. You know what I mean? So I think that was the impetus behind it. It was just to give them identities, just like we have identities. They also, I think this is the first time Klingons also had skin color differences as well, right? So that was another thing that was chosen to do. So I think it's just evolving it, because I feel like a lot of the the practices and the mandates for most of the canon TOS is that they stay within the canon and the world and not advance out of it. And I feel like just because of the world we're in, I feel like if we did that, we wouldn't resonate as well. Actually, I think you have to sort of progress on some level. So I feel like that's we did, and I think a lot of people like it. So far, it seems good. So I think we did okay. So yeah.
Now, before you started working, did you watch previous seasons, or did you just look at the set designs to see how the costumes look for all the Star Trek shows from the past decades?
What I did, I did look. I mean, usually if we were doing a specific thing, because I didn't have a lot of time, I would look at a specific episode. I watched the JJ movies, and I watched a lot of the movies, actually, and I felt that was an easier way of it sort of encapsulated the season or that particular iteration of Star Trek. So that was what helped me. And I feel like I actually wanted, when I was off, I feel like I wanted to watch more of it and do more research on that level, but I just didn't have any time. It was like really hard to get into that and have the time to, it takes a minute to sit and look at it. But what was really interesting, I did end up watching some episodes of the first series, and I was really shocked, or not shocked, but pleasantly surprised at how the storylines still resonate today. You know what I mean? And I thought that was really interesting. Not so much the costumes, but definitely the stories.
Hey, I'd rock one of those mini skirts with a pair of.
Would you? Yeah. Wow, we did do them in Mirror. That was a nod we did in Mirror Universe. I don't know if you noticed that. I think Detmer wore one and some other people wore one. So that's something that we might consider later on too. But it will be done in a different way. Like I like that way where it's not necessarily. It's more of a tunic, and a guy or a male or a man or a woman could wear it. It doesn't have to be a mini skirt in that sense. You know what I mean? Because I felt like, I got asked a lot about gender fluidity, and and I felt like our costumes were, and we want to keep that going forward. That we don't just make, there will always be things for women and things for men, but from a uniform point of view, it's kind of nice that it's just the same uniform that everybody wears. So
I thought it was really neat when I watched the episodes that when we were exploring, we were seeing different sentient beings. Mm-hmm. They all had distinct looks. Like everyone had a look that sort of represented their species. Yeah. How difficult was it to keep all those classified? Because there was a lot of different outfits.
Well, the thing for me, one of the good things, bad things, it's hard to say, is that some of them were in like the Mirror universe. So I felt like there was a different licenses and a different set of rules for the Mirror as opposed to in prime time. So that was something that sort of helped me. And also, you're right, it really was hard keeping them separate, because I felt like I wanted to steal things, and when I put them there, I was like, no, but I can't do that, because that belongs over there, and you can't have it over here, but I wanted to, you know what I mean? It was like this thing that kept happening, and even as I'm going forward, I still feel that's sort of like, it's a pull, because I might really like a certain thing, and I'm trying to say, no, that strictly stays over in that world. And so, yeah, it's really hard, actually. It's really hard, and it's hard to keep things looking alien, you know what I mean, and sort of have that sort of look of alien and also not been done before and not been seen before. So those are the things that I'm always striving for. It's just having you.
I know. I'm looking forward to season 2 and seeing the outfits that you'll be bringing. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you. That was really fun.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. Nice to meet you. All right.